Christmas 2015. The air was thick with the scent of pine and cinnamon, Mom's picture-perfect decorations shimmering under the warm glow of candlelight. Dad pretended to be engrossed in the football game on TV, his hand discreetly reaching for his whiskey-filled mug. My older brother Ethan, the golden child, was already on his third beer, a smirk playing on his lips as he watched me set the table. "Nice apron, loser," he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Did Mom put you in charge of the kitchen again? What are you, her little sous chef?" My cheeks burned. I enjoyed helping Mom cook, but Ethan never missed a chance to twist it into an insult. By the time we sat down for dinner, he was buzzing with alcohol and malice, his snide comments aimed at everyone and everything: the food, Dad's lack of culinary skills, even Mom's carefully arranged centerpiece. But his favorite target, as always, was me. "Still getting those C's in math, loser?" he'd announce, loud enough for the whole table to hear. "Don't worry, not everyone's cut out for college. Maybe you can be a chef or something. You're good at carrying trays." My fists clenched under the table, my appetite vanishing. Mom would try to laugh it off, a weak, "Oh, Ethan, stop teasing," escaping her lips, but she never actually stopped him. No one did this year, though. Ethan wasn't satisfied with just words. Fueled by alcohol, he turned his attention to me, grilling me about why I wasn't helping out more or pulling my weight. The irony was thick. Ethan never lifted a finger unless it was to grab another beer. "You're such a lazy little prick," he snapped, leaning across the table, his words slurred but cutting deep. "Mom and Dad do everything for you. You think life's just going to hand you a free ride?" I couldn't take it anymore. "At least I'm not a drunk," I retorted, my voice trembling with anger. The table fell silent. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe my words had finally gotten through to him. But then his face contorted with rage, and he shot up from his chair, sending it clattering to the floor. "You little," he spat. "Say that again." Before I could even react, he lunged. His fist connected with my face, and the world spun. I crashed to the floor, the taste of blood filling my mouth, tears stinging my eyes. "Ethan, stop it!" Mom shrieked, rushing to pull him back. Dad grabbed him by the shoulders, dragging him into the living room as Ethan cursed and yelled about how I deserved it. I sat there on the floor, stunned. My nose was bleeding, my cheek throbbed, and Mom, she didn't even look at me. She was too busy fussing over Ethan, stroking his arm, whispering, "It's okay, sweetie, just breathe." When the chaos subsided, Mom pulled me aside, her voice sharp. "You shouldn't have said that to him. You know how Ethan gets. You provoked him." "Provoked him?" I repeated, incredulous. "He punched me in the face." "You're fine," she dismissed. "Family sticks together, no matter what. You need to apologize to Ethan." The floor seemed to disappear beneath me. Apologize? For what? For standing up to him? For bleeding all over her precious tablecloth? I wanted to scream, but instead I just nodded numbly and went to my room, slamming the door behind me. That night, as I lay in bed with an ice pack pressed against my swollen cheek, the realization hit me. Ethan wasn't the problem. Not really. The real problem was my parents. They coddled him, excused him, and enabled him. They'd rather protect their golden boy than admit he was anything less than perfect. And if that meant throwing me under the bus, so be it. The cracks in our family had always been there, but now they were gaping wide, and deep down, I knew this was just the beginning. After that Christmas, things didn't just go back to normal. They got worse. Ethan's punch wasn't a one-time thing. It was a green light. He treated me however he wanted, and Mom and Dad, they let it happen. They fueled it. Ethan, of course, never apologized. He acted like I was the one who'd messed up. He swaggered around the house like he'd conquered something. I couldn't figure out what was worse, his arrogance or my parents' silence. Mom would say things like, "Ethan's just under a lot of stress," and Dad would mumble, "Boys will be boys," whenever I tried to bring it up, but I wasn't going to let it slide. Something inside me had snapped that Christmas night. I couldn't pretend anymore. I started avoiding Ethan. I'd lock myself in my room when he was home, scarf down dinner quickly to avoid his taunts, but he noticed. "What's the matter, little bro? Scared of me now?" he'd sneer, blocking my way in the hallway. He'd lean in close, grinning like it was all a joke. "Don't worry, I won't hit you again, unless you give me a reason." It was infuriating. I wanted to fight back, wipe that smug look off his face, but I knew better. Ethan was bigger, stronger, and way more reckless. Any fight would end badly for me. So I did the only thing I could. I planned my escape. I buried myself in schoolwork. I wasn't a great student, but good grades were my ticket out of that house. I started spending late nights at the library, making up excuses about group projects. Anywhere but home. It worked for a while, but Ethan wouldn't leave me alone. He found new ways to torment me. If I left my textbooks out, he'd scribble all over my notes. If I tried to watch TV, he'd change the channel and tell me to do something useful. And when I confronted him, "Relax, it's just a joke." One night, he went too far. It was a Friday, and I'd just gotten home from school. I'd been working on an essay worth a huge chunk of my grade, and I'd left my laptop charging on the dining table. When I walked in, I found Ethan sitting there, flipping through my essay like it was a comic book. "What are you working on, nerd?" He grinned, scrolling through the pages. "Give it back," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Chill out, I'm just looking," he said, but there was a glint in his eye that made me sick to my stomach. Before I could stop him, he deleted the file. Just like that. Weeks of work gone. He laughed as I lunged for the laptop, holding it out of my reach like we were kids again. "What the hell is wrong with you?" I yelled, my voice cracking. "Relax," he said, tossing the laptop onto the table. "You've got time to rewrite it. Besides, maybe it'll actually be good this time." I wanted to scream, to hit him, to do anything to wipe that smirk off his face. But it wouldn't matter. Ethan always got away with everything. I stormed upstairs and slammed my bedroom door, shaking with rage. I could hear my parents downstairs asking Ethan what happened. His response? "Oh, he's just being dramatic." And they believed him, of course. When I tried to tell them what he'd done, Mom sighed and said, "You need to stop letting him get to you. He's your brother. You should be able to handle a little teasing." Teasing. That's what she called it. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait until college. I needed to leave, and soon. I started looking for part-time jobs, saving every penny. I didn't care where I went, as long as it was far away from Ethan. But leaving wasn't enough. I wanted revenge, not the petty, impulsive kind, but something that would really hurt him. Something that would make him feel the way he'd made me feel all these years. Powerless, humiliated, alone. I didn't have a plan yet, but I knew one thing for sure. Ethan's reign of terror wasn't going to last forever. And when it all came crashing down, I was going to make damn sure I wasn't there to pick up the pieces. By the spring of 2016, the tension in our house was a living thing. Ethan had crossed every line imaginable, and I was done playing the peacekeeper. I couldn't fight him physically. I'd lose every time. But I could fight him another way. It was time to chip away at that pedestal my parents had built for him. It was time to make him pay. Ethan, oblivious as ever, was coasting through life on his charm and my parents' blind support. But there were cracks in his golden boy image, and I was going to pry them open. He'd always been reckless, but lately it was like he was daring the world to catch him. He'd dropped out of community college after one semester, claiming it was boring, and spent his days drinking, playing video games, and mooching off Mom and Dad. They'd complained, sure, but the second he flashed that smile, all was forgiven. Meanwhile, I was working my ass off. I'd landed a part-time job at a coffee shop, saving every penny for my escape. I was studying harder, not just for the grades, but to prove to myself that I was better than this mess of a family. But Ethan couldn't stand to see me succeed. He hated it. It reminded him of his own failures, so he doubled down on being a jerk. He started stealing my money, rifling through my room when I wasn't home, taking whatever cash I'd stashed away. When I confronted him, he'd just shrug and say, "I'll pay you back." He never did. Then, one day, I came home to find my favorite jacket missing, the one my grandma had given me before she passed away. When I asked Ethan about it, he smirked and said, "Oh, that old thing? Sold it. Needed beer money." That was it. The final straw. I wasn't just angry anymore, I was furious, and I knew exactly how to hit him where it hurt. See, for all his charm and swagger, Ethan had a secret. He wasn't as bulletproof as he pretended. He'd been stealing from Mom and Dad for months, using Dad's credit card to buy booze and video games. I'd stumbled across the evidence by accident, a bank statement left on the kitchen counter with charges they couldn't explain. I didn't say anything at first. I wanted to be smart about it, gather proof. So I started taking pictures of receipts, screenshots of his online orders, and even recording him bragging to his friends about how he was living rent-free and using the old man's money. Then, one night, I struck. Everyone was asleep. I slipped into my parents' room and left a neatly organized folder on their nightstand. Inside were all the receipts, screenshots, and recordings I'd collected. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need to. The evidence spoke for itself. The next morning, the house erupted. "What the hell is this?" Dad's voice boomed. I peeked out of my room to see him holding the folder, his face red with rage. Mom was on the couch, crying. Ethan stood there like a deer caught in headlights. "I can explain," he stammered, but Dad cut him off. "Explain what? You've been stealing from us, Ethan, thousands of dollars, and you thought we wouldn't notice? I was going to pay it back," Ethan shouted, his voice cracking. I needed it, okay? I'm under a lot of pressure." "Pressure?" Mom said, her voice trembling. "You don't have a job, Ethan. You dropped out of school. What pressure?" Ethan's excuses crumbled. For the first time, my parents weren't buying his crap. I stayed in my room, listening to the shouting match, a small smile creeping across my face. Ethan, punishment wasn't as severe as I'd hoped. My parents couldn't bring themselves to kick him out, but they did cut him off financially. No more free rides, no more credit card handouts. He was furious, of course, but there was nothing he could do about it. He'd been exposed, and he knew somehow that it was me. He didn't have proof, but he didn't need it. From that day on, he made my life hell. He'd blast music late at night, accidentally break my stuff, and spread rumors about me at school. It hurt, sure, but it didn't matter. I'd already won. Because while Ethan was spiraling, I was getting ready to leave. By the end of the school year, I had enough money saved to move out. I found a small apartment with a couple of roommates, close enough to school, but far, far away from Ethan and my parents. When I told them I was leaving, Mom cried. "You don't have to go," she said. "We can work this out." But I'd made up my mind. "I need space," I told her. "This isn't healthy for any of us." Ethan didn't say a word. He just glared at me from the corner of the room, his jaw clenched. I could see the hatred in his eyes, but I didn't care. Let him hate me. I was free. It felt strange being out on my own. Like a bird finally pushing out of the nest, wings shaky at first, but then finding the wind. No more Ethan, no more walking on eggshells, no more feeling like a ghost in my own home. But there was this waiting to see if Ethan would actually face any real consequences for what he'd done. At first, it didn't seem like much had changed. He was still at home, still leeching off Mom and Dad, barely holding down a part-time job at a hardware store. Mom would text sometimes, saying how hard Ethan was trying, how he was figuring things out. I ignored her. I was done with her excuses. Then, one day Dad called. "He got fired," he said, his voice heavy. Apparently, Ethan had shown up late one too many times. I just said, "Oh, that's too bad." But inside, I was grinning. It felt like justice. Just one more crack in his facade. But it didn't stop there. Over the next few months, things went from bad to worse. Ethan drank more, blew what little money he had on booze, and went out with his loser friends. He'd come home late, stumbling, waking everyone up. Mom and Dad were at their wits' end, but they still wouldn't kick him out. "He just needs some support," Mom said during one of her calls. "He's going through a rough patch." "Sounds like a self-inflicted rough patch," I replied, not bothering to hide my disdain. The real turning point came when Ethan got into legal trouble. He and his buddies had been out drinking, decided to drive to another bar, and ended up in a fender bender. No one was seriously hurt. but Ethan got arrested for DUI. I wasn't surprised. If anything, I was surprised it hadn't happened sooner. What did surprise me was the phone call from Mom that night. "We need your help," she said, her voice shaky. "Ethan's in jail, and we can't afford to bail him out." I almost laughed. "Me? Help Ethan? Seriously?" "He's your brother," she said, the guilt thick in her voice. "Family sticks together." That phrase made my blood boil. How many times had she said that to me, only to turn around and defend Ethan? How many times had I been told to suck it up, to apologize, to keep the peace while he got away with everything? "Sorry, Mom," I said, my voice cold. "But I'm not interested in sticking together anymore." She tried to argue, but I hung up. I wasn't going to let her guilt trip me into cleaning up Ethan's mess. Not this time. A few days later, I got an unexpected visitor. I was at my apartment, enjoying a rare day off, when there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there he was. Ethan, looking worse than I'd ever seen him, hair a mess, clothes wrinkled, and desperation in his eyes. It almost made me feel sorry for him. Almost. "Hey," he mumbled. "Can I come in?" I crossed my arms, leaning against the doorframe. "What do you want?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I screwed up, okay? I need help." Hearing him admit that was almost satisfying. Almost. But it wasn't enough to erase years of torment. "You're going to have to be more specific," I said, keeping my voice cold. "What kind of help are you looking for?" He hesitated, looking down at the floor. "I need money. Just enough to get back on my feet. I swear I'll pay you back." I laughed, a sharp, bitter sound. "You want my help? After everything you've done to me?" "That was a long time ago," he said quickly. "I was a dumb kid. I didn't know any better." "You knew exactly what you were doing," I snapped. "And now you want me to bail you out?" "Not a chance." Ethan's face twisted in frustration. "Come on, man, I'm your brother. Were you thinking about that when you stole my money? Or when you deleted my essay? When you punched me in the face?" I stepped closer, my voice rising. "You don't get to play the family card now, Ethan. You burned that bridge a long time ago." He opened his mouth to argue, but I slammed the door in his face. That was the last time I saw Ethan in person. Mom called a few days later, begging me to reconsider, but I stood my ground. "If you want to keep enabling him, that's your choice," I said. "But don't expect me to clean up his mess." From what I heard, Ethan eventually got bailed out, probably by my parents draining their savings. But the fallout from his arrest was severe. His reputation was ruined, his friends abandoned him, and he couldn't hold down a job. Meanwhile, I was thriving. I'd gotten a promotion at work, started dating someone amazing, and finally felt in control of my life. Ethan's misery didn't consume me the way it once might have, but there was a certain satisfaction in knowing he was finally facing the consequences of his actions. The moment I closed that door on Ethan, it was like this weight lifted, not just denying him help, but taking back my power. For years, I'd been his punching bag, the scapegoat for everything wrong in our family. Now, the tables had turned. Life after cutting them out was better than I could have imagined. I dove headfirst into work, and my dedication started paying off. My manager noticed, and I got a promotion. More money, more responsibility. I didn't just take the job, I owned it. And outside of work, my personal life was blooming. I started dating this incredible woman, someone who didn't just tolerate my past, but actually helped me heal from it. We moved in together after a few months, and my little apartment became a real home, warm, full of laughter. Things I'd never had growing up. Ethan's name rarely came up, but every now and then I'd get updates. Mom would call, telling me how hard things were for him, hoping to guilt me, I'm sure. "He's your brother," she'd say, that same pleading tone. "He made his bed," I'd reply coldly. "Let him lie in it." I wasn't getting dragged back into their mess. I'd worked too damn hard to escape. While my life was on the upswing, Ethan's kept spiraling. Losing his job was just the start. After the DUI, he became a pariah, even among his so-called friends. His drinking got worse, and with no income, he started hitting up Mom and Dad for money. At first, they caved. Mom couldn't bear to see her golden boy struggle, and Dad, well, he always followed her lead. But even their patience wore thin. They realized Ethan wasn't looking for help. He was looking for an enabler. When I heard he'd tried to sell their belongings to fund his drinking, I wasn't surprised. Ethan was always good at taking, never giving. The only difference now was he didn't have me to blame for his problems. Years passed. I built a career, a life I was proud of. My partner and I were even talking about buying a house. Life was good, stable, happy, free. Then, one day, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Hey," a voice croaked. It took me a second to recognize it, and when I did, my stomach churned. "Ethan?" I said, my voice flat. "Yeah," he mumbled. I need your help." I almost hung up, but curiosity got the better of me. "What kind of help?" There was a long pause. When he finally spoke, his voice was thick with desperation. "I'm screwed, man. I lost my place, and Mom and Dad won't let me stay with them anymore. I just need a place to crash for a bit, maybe some money to get back on my feet." I couldn't help it. I laughed. A cold, bitter sound. "You think I'm going to help you? After everything you've done?" "I know I messed up," he said quickly. "But we're brothers. You can't just leave me out here." "Watch me," I replied, the satisfaction in my voice undeniable. "You spent years tearing me down, Ethan, years, and now you want me to save you? Not a chance." "Come on, man," he begged. "I'm not asking for much." "You're not asking for anything," I snapped. "Because the answer is no. You don't get to treat me like garbage and then come crawling back when your life falls apart. You're on your own." And I hung up, blocked the number. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. That was the last I ever heard from Ethan. From what I've pieced together, he's still struggling, couch surfing, bouncing between odd jobs, burning every bridge he comes across. My parents have finally stopped enabling him, though not out of principle. They simply don't have anything left to give. As for me, I built a life I'm proud of. A life full of love, respect, success, all the things Ethan tried to take from me. And the best part? He has to watch from the sidelines, knowing he'll never be a part of it. Revenge isn't always about grand gestures or dramatic confrontations. Sometimes it's as simple as thriving in spite of everything. By choosing happiness, I took back the power Ethan and my family had over me. And that, more than anything, is the sweetest revenge of all. It's been years since I cut ties with Ethan and my parents. Years of quiet mornings, peaceful evenings, and the steady hum of a life built on my own terms. I don't regret my decision. It was the only way to save myself. But I've learned that moving on doesn't mean forgetting. The scars they left are still there, faint reminders etched beneath the surface. But they're a part of me now, a part of my story. They're a testament to what I've overcome, proof that I'm stronger than the hurt they inflicted. Sometimes, when I'm feeling particularly reflective, I think about Ethan. I wonder where he is, what he's doing. I imagine him alone, still chasing that fleeting sense of validation he always craved. And I feel a pang of, not sympathy, not exactly. Maybe it's closer to pity. He never understood that true strength isn't about dominance or control. It's about resilience, about the ability to rise above adversity. It's about choosing kindness and compassion, even when it's hard. It's about building a life filled with genuine connection and love, the kind that nourishes your soul and makes you a better person. And that's what I've done. I've built a life Ethan could only dream of, a life rich with love, laughter, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. If there's one thing I've learned from this whole mess, it's that family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by the people who choose you, who support you, who celebrate your victories, and who hold you up during your struggles. It's about finding your tribe, the people who see you, truly see you, and love you unconditionally. And I found that, not in the family I was born into, but in the one I chose for myself. My partner, my friends, and my colleagues, they're my family now. They're the people who make my life worth living. So here's to living well, loving fully, and never letting the past define you. Here's to breaking free from the chains of dysfunction and forging your own path. Here's to finding your own version of happiness, no matter how long it takes or how difficult the journey. And here's to Ethan. May he find peace someday. May he learn that true strength comes from within, not from the approval of others. And may he finally understand that the only person he truly needs to conquer is himself.